Let's talk about the Denver Nuggets. Did they load up for another championship? Seems like it. We're going to talk about all the big questions regarding the season upcoming for Denver. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and Josie is on a vacation far away. And I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms, so thumb it, bang it, comment. Denver Nuggets, it's time. Let's do it. All right, and to talk about the Denver Nuggets for the first time on the show, one of the hosts of the Locked On Nuggets podcast is here. It is Ryan Blackburn. Ryan, welcome to the show for the first time as you get ready to be put under the microscope, under the griller, to talk about this Denver Nuggets team, which is entering a new era that's sort of the same era as before, but just slightly different, I guess. I don't know how you even phrase it, because it's the same era, it's the same guys, it's mostly, but we're talking about new direction from up top.
Yeah, just basically new ways to emphasize Nikola Jokic and his greatness, and being the best player in the world certainly helps. One of the best players in fantasy over the course of these past 5 years. He's been incredible and just an all-timer to be able to cover, and it's been a lot of fun to talk about.
We'll just get straight into talking about Jokic, because here's a question. It seems sacrilegious, right? I know that Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world, and he could have easily won like 5 consecutive MVPs. He's been the number one player in fantasy for many years in a row. I will posit this to you, Ryan. I'm certain that Nikola Jokic is going to regress in terms of his statistical output this season. I have never been more certain of anything in my life, and I know that sounds ridiculous. How do you view that? Because we can go through the numbers, and I'm going to put them up on the screen now. Jokic had an absolutely unbelievable season last season, right? The numbers were incredible. But there are so many areas in those numbers that Jokic put up where I look at it and go, ooh, that could fall by 10% and still be awesome, but it could still fall. So I'm not worried about him being bad or him not being great or being the best player in the NBA, but there has to be some sort of a view of what happened last season and going, geez, I'm not sure we get it at that level again.
I think it's fair. It's a fair statement to make. I mean, think about the season that he actually had. It's one of the, I would say, maybe 5 greatest, maybe even the best statistical season that we've ever seen, just from the amount of production that he put up across the board. He only played in, I believe, either 70 games, 69 games, somewhere around there.
70.
So there is something to be said about he'll probably be a little bit more healthy this time around. But one of the great things about Jokic, just in general, is you look at the last 8 years. I believe he's been in between 2,300 and 2,700 minutes every single time. You know what you're getting with him no matter what. And even if he does regress at least a little bit, I still think he's one of the safest players that you could possibly ask for from a drafting standpoint, and from just a player that you can rely upon from night in, night out. He's one of the most consistent players to stay on the floor. And I still think that Denver, despite the fact that you trade out Cam Johnson in place of Michael Porter Jr., you still have basically the same makeup. All of that makeup is still entirely based around Jokic's skill set. And I think that they may even play through him more in terms of his facilitation. So he may not score as much, but I still think he'll be just as great of a passer.
I think that it's great that you bring those things up, because everything that I said I believe is true, and everything that you said is true, and some might think that those two positions are contradictory, but they're not. Like, I can say that Jokic is going to regress, and you can say he's one of the safest players and one of the best players and the best player in the NBA, and both those things are true. Because if you look at what he did last season, he shot 42% from 3, okay? I'm going to have my doubts he does it again. Like, that's just not a number that's easy to replicate, especially for someone without a track record of being a 40% three-point shooter. He also averaged for some reason, 1.8 steals. I don't know why that happened. He's also never done that anywhere close to those numbers in his career in the past. He played 37 minutes a game. Also, something he has never done before, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on as well. And in order for this team, which has played a lot, and the lack of faith at times that former coach Michael Malone had in some of his bench units, led to the team burning out and wearing down at the end of the season. So while we can say that he's the best player and it's all going to go through him and he's going to be great, averaging 30, 13, and 10 with almost 2 steals, shooting 42% from 3 is basically impossible to replicate. Even if he keeps all the same rate statistics up, he's probably just not going to play 37 minutes a night. That just doesn't seem like it's what they got. They brought in Jonas Valanciunas. They convinced him not to go to Greece. Like, not that Valanciunas is great, but like, he's better than Zeke Nnaji and DeAndre Jordan. So I just on that one point alone, Ryan, he's not playing 37 minutes a night, surely.
100%. That I think if he was playing 37 minutes a night, it would be a disastrous season once again for Denver. The reason why they brought in Valanciunas for that role was to take some of the burden off of him, just so that he can play a little bit of those lesser minutes, not necessarily have to be there on a consistent basis every single night. It's a heavy burden. And for somebody like I've talked about, he has had the heaviest burden in the entire NBA over the course of the last half decade. So lessening that is a goal of Denver's, and bringing in Valanciunas is one of the ways that they'll do that. I got to imagine that bringing down the minutes will be a massive priority for Denver. He just wants to play, though. So I don't think that you're still going to see him play on a consistent basis. He's still going to play at least 32 minutes a night or so. And I think that he still wants to play like at least 70 to 75 games if he can. So that's the other side of this that you may not get with every single other player. Now, most guys are still relatively healthy, but with Jokic, you can almost lock it in. He's going to play 70 to 75 games.
Yeah, like last season, he missed a bunch of games for the birth of his child. He had a hamstring issue at one point, but he's been remarkably healthy throughout his career. I always get worried that at some point someone is going to get it. We saw, like, I used this example the other day. Jason Tatum played every game, like all the time. And guess how many he's going to play this season? Like 0. Like, stuff happens. You don't want it to happen, and you hope it doesn't happen. But at some point, something goes wrong, and you got to always be cautious about that. But yeah, look, even if he keeps up the insane steal numbers that he put up, even if he keeps up 42% shooting from 3, if you lop 4 minutes a game off what he does, that's a sizable chunk. We're talking 10% of his playing time down. That means things come down by 10%, and that is going to be an interesting way to look at it. Again, because in the past he played 34 minutes the year before. He played 33.7 and 33.5 the years before that. I think that's a more reasonable expectation, and that just means that he is going to regress, and you regress from being the best to maybe still being the best, but it is still a hit that is probably going to occur because it's in the best interest of him and the best interests of the team overall. I think when we're looking at their chances of success, because the team addressed it. Malone even addressed this at times. Like, we wore down. Like, we had nothing left in the tank over the last 2 seasons because of the long finals run, but also because we played our guys too much. Like, they've admitted that, and the moves they've made, Ryan, suggest that that's again going to be something they're going to have to really focus on.
100%. The massive factor for why Denver failed in the playoffs this year, there were a couple of things. One was the injuries that they sustained towards the end of the year. Michael Porter Jr. got hurt. Aaron Gordon got hurt right at the end. But Russell Westbrook playing through a hand injury through that second round of the playoffs. But there are other factors as well, including the fact that the reason why those guys had so much burden placed upon them in the first place was because they didn't have a lot of guys to back them up. So you bring in players like Jonas Valanciunas, aforementioned. Cam Johnson comes in. He'll play a steady role in place of Michael Porter Jr., although Michael Porter pretty durable during his time in Denver. So that's one of the underrated factors, and maybe a change for Denver this season that they'll have to figure out. They've still got Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther, but they also bring in Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., a couple of veterans that you're going to be able to trust in those roles. I think that Denver is really going to try to even out those minutes on kind of the middle end of their rotation, kind of that 5 to 9 man spots where usually those guys were just, they're either going to play a lot or they're going to play not at all. Now I think you're going to be looking for 15 to 20 minutes per game from a variety of different players, including Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, some of the young guys that they have. It'll be interesting to see which of those guys kind of steps up into a larger role we think it's going to be Bruce Brown being that kind of reprising that sixth man role, but I'm curious to see and get your impression of who you think is actually going to kind of take the reins there.
We're going to talk a little bit more about some of those depth pieces a little bit later. I've got some thoughts on some of that stuff. We'll get into that in a sec. But before we do that, today's episode, it is brought to you by Game Time. Yes, Game Time. If you've decided last minute, maybe you want to head down to a ball game with friends or family. Maybe you're heading down to Coors Field and you think I want to see some runs. Well, that's the place to go. But you know that sometimes getting tickets can be a real pain, and that's where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress and with that money that you save on tickets, where you can splurge on food and drinks and merch, or maybe even get more of your mates to come with you. Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. The prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee, which takes the worry out of buying. Game Time is also the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, which makes it easy to browse that app for exciting upcoming Major League Baseball games. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Now, we've referenced it. You referenced it. I'm going to reference it again. We're talking about the trade that went down, which is a trade that we can talk about in the singularity of the Michael Porter Jr. for Cam Johnson trade, because it happened, but also making that trade is a financial decision which enabled them to open up space and apron restrictions lifted, all that sort of stuff, to be able to get guys like Bruce Brown to come in. So while we can analyze the trade one-on-one, and we will, it enabled them to bring in more of that depth, which is going to be something we talk about later on in the show. So we did a straight swap here, Michael Porter Jr. for Cam Johnson. You brought up something really interesting, because I'm sure people would have blanched at your comment saying that Michael Porter Jr. was durable in Denver. And that's interesting, because since the time Cam Johnson's entered the league, Michael Porter Jr. has played more games than Cam Johnson, and people go, oh, Porter's always injured. And he had a couple of injuries, so that 1 year where he played 5 games, right? But as a general rule, he has been healthier than Cam Johnson has since Cam Johnson entered the league. And Porter had all of his issues early on, but you're right, he has been pretty good outside of that one really weird season. Now, I know it is very sexy to say that the Nuggets upgraded by getting Cam Johnson. He's a better player than Michael Porter Jr. Look at the numbers he put up, and they're comparable to Porter. I'm not as sure about that. I think that obviously context matters, and when you're playing as the third or fourth option on offense is different to being the number one or number two guy in terms of how you accumulate your stats. How do you view this trade where we bring in Cam Johnson for Michael Porter Jr., not considering the salary part of it and the ability to bring in someone like Bruce Brown on top of that, because obviously that changes it. But in terms of just the straight swap, the starting lineup change, is it an upgrade getting Cam Johnson in?
I do think it's an upgrade, but maybe not for the reasons that most people would think an upgrade actually exists. Like, usually when you're thinking of an upgrade, you're thinking like, okay, you go from Harrison Barnes and a first round pick for Kevin Durant, and that's the direction that you're trying to go with something like that. For Denver and for this trade, 1-for-1 swap, it is not as crazy, I think, because Cam Johnson is still going to be a role player at the end of the day. He's still going to be somebody that plays off of Jokic, that plays off of Murray and Gordon and those guys. But one great thing that he will bring to the table, high basketball IQ, a little bit better of a playmaker for other people. One of the problems that Denver had with Porter specifically was they struggled to get him involved on a variety of different actions. And those actions were difficult when you wanted to include Michael Porter in a DHO or draw up an ISO for him or a post-up or things like that. He was worse at that than what Cam is. Now, Michael Porter's probably a better individual scorer just from, hey, you give him the ball and he will rise up and fire in a spot-up situation or in a transition situation. He's a very physical cutter, offensive rebounder, things like that. Those were definitely helpful things. But within the flow of the offense, within a lot of the actions that other teams are going to be expecting the Nuggets to run, I think that Cam Johnson's going to be more versatile. He's going to be somebody that they can put out there on a consistent basis and expect him to be a threat at all times, and somebody that can help make Denver's offense a little bit more varied and versatile than what Michael Porter's was.
The interesting part of all that, he's a better passer, Cam Johnson, without any question. He's better at involving others, but also like in a situation where you're sharing the court with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic and even Aaron Gordon is a really good passer for his position. I'm not sure how often Cam Johnson's going to be doing any of that sort of stuff. So he averaged, 3.5 assists last season in Brooklyn. We can look at all these numbers, 23 usage. He averaged 19, 4, and 3. And people go, well, that's great. Now he's playing with Jokic. It's going to be easier. But we're going to talk opportunities because Porter only had a usage of 20% playing on this squad. And Johnson might go lower than that. Like if you're on a Brooklyn team with, you're playing alongside Keon Johnson and Nick Claxton, you're still only getting 23 usage. It means you're probably not that aggressive in hunting your shot. So he could easily come in here and be a 16% usage player with guys like Tim Hardaway getting shots and Bruce Brown and Jonas Valanciunas coming off the bench as a higher usage player than DeAndre Jordan, and when you mix it in a matching lineup. So it's going to be an interesting comparison. Very rarely, Ryan, do we get these, 1-for-1, same position swaps that happen. It just doesn't happen that often. As it was like there's other pieces, and yes, there is other financial parts of it, but this is just like the same player, the same role, the same, like just switching teams, and we'll see how they go in this spot. So while it's easy to look at what Cam did and think that, well, he'll do this and his efficiency will go up because it's Jokic, I think there's going to be some pretty sizable downticks in some of his numbers, and I guess we'll get a pretty good idea of whether it was an upgrade or not by the end of this season, just to see how they work in different roles, because context is important with all of this sort of stuff. So I'm intrigued to see how that goes with Cam Johnson. The depth is an interesting part of it, which we are going to get to a little bit later on. But in terms of Johnson and health, which has been a problem, we talked that already, and we've already mentioned about the over-reliance they've had on some of their players. How do you see him being used? Because they've got one of the strongest benches they've had. You've mentioned Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson coming off the bench, Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway. And Jonas Valanciunas. That is a 5-deep bench that is really quite strong. And it's not even including someone like a Jalen Pickett who stepped up last season. How much do they ease off of Cam Johnson? Do you think that he's playing 30 minutes? Is he a 28-minute guy? What is David Adelman's philosophy around that? Or we just don't know at this point?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I think one of the interesting things is that Denver's always kind of been under Michael Malone, and David Adelman's been there for a lot of that time as well, just as the primary assistant coach. He's always been a guy where 30 minutes per game for each of the starters. You want to rely on the starters. Part of that might have been by necessity because Denver just didn't have the extensive depth that they were expecting, that they were hoping for. And now that they have it, I wonder if you kind of see some regression from those starters. Cam Johnson, though, is still one of those guys. I think Denver, with the versatility that he has, you always want those kinds of guys out there that, kind of like Michael Porter. One of the great things about having Porter out there in all of these Jokic lineups was just needing that spacing, needing that primary kind of attention guy to kind of take away from a lot of the primary actions that Denver were using, Jokic and Murray, and specifically having a guy like Porter out there was super valuable. I tend to think that having Cam Johnson out there is going to be just as valuable, if not more so. He has a little bit of positional versatility at power forward as well, so wouldn't surprise me if Aaron Gordon potentially misses some time throughout the season. Then you could have Cam Johnson out there sliding to power forward, playing a little bit more of a small ball 4 role. And so I think that the mechanisms to get him 30 minutes per game are still going to be there. And then when there's injuries throughout the season, he might play a little bit more. When there's a full rotation out there, he might play a little less.
It is going to be really intriguing to watch to see how they incorporate a bunch of new pieces onto the team, and with a new head coach and a new front office and different philosophies potentially. We'll have to see how all that plays out. We're going to talk about the strategy of this team as a general rule coming up in a sec. Today's episode, though, it is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. The last time that you had something that you were urgently looking for, a plumber or whatever it is, electrician, because you've lost your power, do you call someone and they don't answer? You go, well, yeah, I guess I'm good. I just won't go to the toilet for the next 24 hours until they call back. No, you go to the next person. And that is why having someone like Open Phone, that business phone available, is important, so you never miss a lead. Open Phone lets you manage your business calls and texts from a single app. It is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, which is all available on an app on your phone or on your computer. And their AI agent handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures the leads so that you never miss a customer. OpenPhone is offering you guys 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That is OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, so we've been leading up to this final question, which is a very broad sort of statement here, Ryan, about this team, because I think it is important with the way that they've addressed their depth coming up. They have been burnt out completely the last couple of seasons. I guess the question I pose here is, did they address the burnout? I think we've established that they did by bringing in Hardaway, Brown, Valanciunas, and these guys that provide better depth than Hunter Tyson. How, and obviously letting Russell Westbrook go is a part of all that stuff as well. We're bringing these guys in. So, like, they've done it from a front office perspective. They said, we need bodies. And you heard yesterday, actually, Rick Carlisle was on Caitlin Cooper's podcast talking about the NBA and talking about, hey, you know what the NBA is at the moment? You got to go balls out, 48 minutes a night. You need to go deep into your rotation. You need to pull the minutes back of some of these guys, because if you don't go hard all the time, you're going to lose. And like, his team is obviously the poster child for that, because that's how they were successful. They just never let up. They put everyone out there to play. You can't run with a 7-man rotation because you will get worn down, and then your bad players have to come in and then they can't contribute. So Denver, obviously, from a top-down perspective, said, right, we are going to do this. We are going to bring depth in, because it is conceivable that Bruce Brown could be a 27-minute-a-night player. Tim Hardaway played 30 minutes a night last season, and they're not going to do that. Valanciunas could be a starter on some bad teams. Like, if he played for Charlotte, he'd play 30 minutes a night. But all of these guys are going to have to sacrifice this role. So they've addressed this burnout in terms of that rotation. What else can they do here? Like, what else? How extreme will they go into that? Will they be more cautious with games off for players? Will they be more, like, obviously we saw multiple injuries strike down Aaron Gordon last season. He hurt his calf like 3 times, then a hamstring in the playoffs. Like, he's getting older as well. Like, will they be more proactive in trying to prevent that array of soft tissue injuries to someone like him and Jamal Murray, who have hurt themselves time and time again over the last couple of seasons? Because, now that you've got the extra depth, will they be extra cautious about that?
We're still trying to figure it out. There's still a little bit of ambiguity in terms of how David Adelman's going to run that, because he came in and had 3 regular season games as the head coach, and Denver needed to win all 3 of the games in order to secure the spot that they did. And so there was a lot of pressure on that. It was basically like, we're gonna see what happens right at the end of the year. We're gonna just go all out and see what we could do. I think that Denver, heading into this season, knowing that they have the depth that they do, the goal should be to have Aaron Gordon ready and going for the playoffs and maximizing at that late point in time, just like any kind of late stage contender. And Denver's not necessarily late stage. Last year, I kind of described them as passing their half-life as a contender, because they've been to the playoffs, I think now 7 straight seasons, I want to say. And when you are first trying to figure that out, you're getting your feet wet a little bit. Denver's been a true contender outside of the year that Murray and Porter went down for each of the last 4 seasons or so. Now they are in that stage where, hey, you're trying to hold on, and the best way to do that is to rely on a whole bunch of people during the regular season to rest your veterans as often as you can. So we'll see whether they actually get into that or not, but I would expect Aaron Gordon, if he can stay healthier, if he can avoid soft tissue injuries throughout the year, to still play about 60 games or so, just at a lesser volume and needing a little bit less time overall to get yourself ready.
We'll talk about 2 players in this section. One of them is Aaron Gordon. I want to talk a little bit about Christian Braun in a sort of separate way into that. But like, talking about Aaron Gordon, like, the change in his game, I don't think many people realize this. Like, he's known as this elite defender. He generates no defensive stats, like half a steal and 0.3 blocks. Like, that's it. Like, he's never a high volume guy, but he doesn't do that anymore. Now he's like, all right, I'm a 44% 3-point shooter. And not only that, like, he went from like a 60s free throw guy to shooting 80% from the line. It smells like it's a fluke, but he just continued to do it. How confident are you, or how confident is the team that that's a real thing? Do they lean further into it? Because it's not like he took a lot of threes. Like, he only hit 1.5 a game, shooting 44%. Can they lean into that more? Do they think, all right, we saw that, you worked hard at it, it happened. Like, now you're going to be out there actually bombing a little bit more, less of the driving and lobs and dunks that may have contributed to soft tissue injuries? Do they lean further into that with him?
I would be shocked if he shot 44% from 3 again.
It's never happening. It's just not going to happen.
That would be a surprise to me. But I do think that you see this with the athletic power forward type. Blake Griffin did this late in his career. Paul Millsap for Denver did it late in his career, where these guys, knowing that they have to have their bodies kind of survive until the end of the regular season and then into the playoffs, you want to transition into more of a finesse game. You're less about power. You're less about physicality, because it's difficult to play that kind of style that he has been playing. It's a completely different style than what he was playing in 2023. He nearly made an all-star team for Denver that year. He was so good, but he was banging. He was in the dunker. He was rolling to the rim all the time. Now I think you're seeing more of a finesse game. He will continue to shoot from the outside. And the defensive stats, I think, is actually very interesting. I think that that's probably a trend that stays. He's probably not going to be a super impactful steals and blocks guy. He's not wide-ranging like that. He's going to be a fundamentally sound, kind of try to stand you up a little bit as a defender, force you to miss, and then get a rebound. That's the expectation. Guys like Peyton Watson and Christian Braun are going to be a little bit more impactful in passing lanes and blocking at the rim. But I do think that Aaron Gordon, as he continues to get smarter, and he's already a very high IQ player in general, as he continues to kind of transition into that type of veteran, that's where I would expect him to go, is just a little bit less impact.
You mentioned the last name there that I'm going to talk about, and that is Christian Braun, because people who followed my channel knows I was very skeptical about Christian Braun last season. I was like, I don't believe that this level of shooting improvement is real, and it was, and I was wrong. That is one of the more incredible single-season efficiency improvements that we've seen in recent times. He went from a 46% field goal guy to 58. This doesn't happen. And he also went from a 69 free throw guy to 83. Like, true shooting jumps from 55 to 67. Those sort of leaps are incredible. 67 is elite efficiency. So my initial reaction is, of course, that won't hold, and that will have to come down. It's very hard to stay at that level and improve. And one thing, Ryan, is that I don't think many people remember this, but Christian Braun lost his starting job last season. He lost it in January. Russell Westbrook took over. Braun went to the bench and played like 27 minutes or 28 minutes as a bench player. And then in like one game later, Westbrook got hurt. Braun took back over and was back into that role. I'm not saying that Braun's going to lose that job necessarily, but it wasn't all like roses and he'd locked it down. He's guaranteed, because he lost the position during the season, and there were a lot of things that just went unbelievably right for him to turn into this player. Now, I am, and especially bringing in Tim Hardaway, a shooter, Bruce Brown, a trusted veteran. How sticky is the role of Christian Braun, who played 34 minutes a night last season? The minutes actually ramped up after he lost that job. They started to get bigger towards the end of the season. You know, when he came back into that starting lineup and Gordon and Westbrook were hurt. How sticky is that role? Because say he goes back to being even like a 60% true shooting guy instead of 67, and you've got Braun and Hardaway there, like where does that fit in? Because is his value just in that absolute elite efficiency, or are there other things that can contribute that if he falls back to being a subpar efficiency guy, that he's still going to maintain that role?
It's a good question. It's also something that the Nuggets are trying to figure out. From extension talks with him. He's in heading into his fourth season. It's his rookie extension time. They're trying to figure out exactly how valuable he is in relation to what he does next to Jokic, which is always difficult with some of the Denver guys. I firmly believe in him, especially while he's in Denver, while he's playing next to Jokic. He's a high IQ basketball player. He got better on the defensive end throughout the season and continues to improve as an on-ball defender, somebody who gets around screens, somebody you can trust to guard the opposing team's best perimeter player on a consistent basis. I do think that Denver believes in him. I do think that they want him to be their fifth starter on a consistent basis. He's a guy, when you're talking about, okay, when you're trying to rest guys like Cam Johnson or Jamal Murray or Aaron Gordon throughout the year, you can lean on Christian Braun a little bit more. Maybe not necessarily from an overall points per game role, but just somebody that you can trust to have out there as a fundamental player next to Jokic. They like that. They want somebody out there that can do that dirty work. And he's getting better. He's I think, going to be one of those guys that looks a little bit better. He's going to take harder shots next year. I think that that's one thing that you're probably going to see from him. It's not just going to be layups. It's not just going to be transition shots. It's not just going to be trying to get to the free throw line. He will take more threes. He will take more shots off the dribble. That's naturally going to lower that efficiency, I think, but it's going to make him a better overall player for Denver, somebody that they will continue to trust, want to have out there, and be a playoff guy for them when the time comes.
That all brings us back to that initial point that I made talking about Jokic and regression and context regarding this, because you're right. If Christian Braun starts to take harder shots and becomes more reliable and is not an incredibly low usage player, 15% usage last season, and becomes an 18, 19 usage guy because he's more relied upon, then that's better for Denver. But it's worse from my perspective, from a fantasy point of view, and worse for his individual numbers, because over the last month, the last 14 games, he shot 73% on twos. He shot 46% on threes. Like, these are just things that literally nobody does. Like, it is impossible to do that over the course of the season. But he did it for large chunks. And he did it on incredibly low volume. And the usual thing is you ramp the volume up, the efficiency comes down. So it's very easy to look at that, go, Brown, breakout, look at those numbers. He's only in year 4. It'll continue to improve. But as a general rule, like, he might be better as a player. But some of those individual things and some of the things they relied upon him from or for won't necessarily carry over, because it's just literally it's impossible to be able to do those things over the course of a career or a full season. And we'll see where it goes. Maybe I'll be proven wrong again on Christian Braun and his ability to maintain that level of efficiency. I feel pretty confident that he won't stick at that level. And it's going to be intriguing, especially with those guys behind him, like Brown and Hardaway. And then there is Jalen Pickett, who we'll see where his role is. But it is an intriguing team. I think they have done one of the better jobs in the offseason of making themselves better for the upcoming season, as they do sort of push in to make themselves championship contenders, because you need to do that. You need the depth. You need the players. They're all there. Jokic no one's getting any younger. They saw a bit of the mortality of Aaron Gordon and some of his injuries. They need to make that move now, Ryan, and they did, and it's going to be an exciting season. So thank you for coming on, talking about the Denver Nuggets, and I'm excited to see your coverage over on Locked On Nuggets throughout the season. Thanks for coming on for the first time and providing us with those insights.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it, man.
And that is the end of the Denver Nuggets preview. Again, all of this is context. I don't think that Jokic is going to be bad. I don't think that Christian Braun is going to lose his job or necessarily be bad. I've just got to have some skepticism about some of the numbers that get put up and some of the things that happen where it's just an unlikely scenario to continue to happen. This team is going to be intriguing. When a team loads up on depth like this, you have to be cautious about some of the top-end outcomes for some of the other players, and I think that's exactly where we're at with this Nuggets squad. Where you should be at with me and this squad is hitting the thumb on the video, subscribing, and leaving your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.